Hey, welcome back to the 7-Figure Music School podcast. I'm Daniel. This is Nate, and we are tackling another subject today that is important to music school owners. And Nate, what I would say is that a lot of times the episode topics that we choose come from the fact that I've been answering this question for years, and I want a definitive place to answer it, quote unquote, once and for all, where if I get the question again, I can just say, hey, check this episode out.
Point to the pod.
Exactly. It's saving me a lot of time on emails these days. So, because we get a lot of questions from listeners and would-be clients, and now that we've got grouplessons.com, Piano Express, that curriculum going, I get these questions now because more and more attention is kind of coming towards that opportunity as well. And speaking of things like Piano Express or big music games, which both are sponsors of this podcast, we had a question come in from a listener that, again, it's one of those things where I can't believe we've gotten to 150 plus episodes and never talked about this topic.
Yeah.
But here we are. And the question, I'm not going to belabor the point anymore. The question is, should you build a custom curriculum for your school? Should you make your own materials? Should you make your own method? Should you make your own sort of thing? And this is also interesting to me because at least once a month, I kid you not, at least once a month, I get, with a few exceptions here and there, but I get an email from someone saying, Daniel, I think I want to work with you because I have this great idea for a product that I could sell to all the music teachers and music school owners out there that I think is just amazing. And I say, oh, interesting. Well, why do you want to work with me? Well, you've had success selling lots of things online. You've had success building a custom curriculum and it being very successful. So I want to learn from you how you did it. And then I ask, well, what is it? Well, I have reimagined music flashcards. And I'm ready to unleash upon the world this new thing. Or I have a new way of counting eighth notes and I want to teach all the teachers. And what are your goals? I want to make $1 million selling this. I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. Well, slow down. Let's talk through this. So right. This is the episode that I want to send to folks who have a great idea or who they just can't seem to find the thing out there that they're looking for. And so they feel like they must build it because that's what's exciting to them. Okay. So Nate, we both have experience building custom curriculum.
Yes, we do.
Quite a bit. So let's dive into this. And let me just start by asking, why did you build a custom curriculum at Brooklyn Music Factory?
That's a great question. We started by doing what most music school owners do, which is I just grabbed the first book that a friend recommended. So we were using Music Tree method. But right away, I got bored quickly. So that's one motivating factor. I was like, I don't want to be bored. Number two, I noticed that my students were struggling a bit. So that could be a reflection on me as a teacher at the time, or it could be a reflection on the methodology. But number three, what happened was right away, Daniel, I had just come out of doing like years and years of TV work and film scoring. So I had this amazing studio and I was fast with making tracks and all these things. And so right away, what I started doing was making all these jam tracks to go along with everything in Music Tree. So literally they'd be playing like G and C and I'd have like a funk band playing behind them. And then, so what's interesting is you asked the question, why did you start building music curriculum? Well, at the time I had no idea I was building it. You know what I mean? I was just literally creating all these materials to try to keep the students engaged and to keep me engaged. And it wasn't until I was like maybe 8 to 10 months in to doing this that I was like, hold on a second. Dude, you spend most of your lesson prep time designing materials for your students that are custom, right? You're literally actually only using the G and C song, which there's nothing really to these entry-level songs, right? You're just using that as a trigger to get you to design more customized materials. So that's probably my first answer to the question, which is if you're already doing this naturally and your lesson prep time is spent trying to design custom curriculum for your students all the time, well, then you might be one of those people, those creators that is meant to do it at scale to serve lots of other teachers. You may not be, and we're going to get into the details of why you shouldn't do it. But at least for me, that was a real indicator that I was probably meant to do this. How about you, Daniel? What about you? Like when you and Greg started getting into it, what was the motivator?
Yeah. There was a need that we had personally. When we built Piano Express
Yeah.
originally, it was solve a problem that we both had. And keep in mind, this was 2005. MySpace was barely on the public consciousness. Facebook hadn't been invented yet. Twitter hadn't been invented yet. There wasn't this idea of being an online entrepreneur. It literally was just for us. We've got summer retention problems. Let's build a camp. That was it. As time went on, and I built a platform in public, and put my name and face on it, and began engaging with the larger music education world, it became more evident to me that Piano Express could be something that would be of value to other people as well. And I will say, I'm going to hold back right there. That's all I'm going to answer, because
Wait.
I
So
feel
just to
myself
clarify,
wanting to launch into something else. Go ahead.
yeah, I know. Hold on, we got a lot of stuff. We got a lot of topics to cover. But just to clarify, you're telling me that initially you and Greg started designing curriculum. Was it specifically for a camp?
Yes.
Oh, dig it. And did you? Was it pen and paper at that time, or was it
We
all
used
online? What was the initial? I'm just curious.
Right. Yeah. So we built all our workbook. So I wrote a curriculum in Microsoft Word. I wrote the
Nice.
the lesson plans, because we eventually planned to hire other people to teach it. So we started building it the right way.
Right.
And Greg built our workbooks, our songbooks, on Finale,
Yeah,
which
totally.
doesn't even exist anymore, I don't think.
Nopes.
And then we just self-printed. We printed it out of his
Yeah,
LaserJet printer at his house in the summer of 2005. We were building curriculum for the camp,
totally.
as the camp was going on. And only later, when we needed to do this more at scale, did we go and have it printed professionally.
And when did you, just curious in your history, when did you guys decide to make it an online resource? Like, so that
Sure.
in the current version, was that
Yeah.
years later, or was that pretty soon thereafter that you started investing in code?
It's a great question, Nate. What's funny about these questions is that, and this isn't, I'm not making a judgment here. We talked about this in a little bit all the way back in episode 33. So it's been
Mm,
over 2 years since we kind of went through this. And we only did it in a cursory fashion. I didn't get into as in the depth as the questions you're asking here. But the first 5 years, it was a summer camp only, from 2005 till 2010. Piano
right.
Express was only a summer camp. In 2010, Greg turned it into a year-round curriculum, and I really wasn't involved in that part of it. And
Mm,
then in 2017, the software component was added to it.
got it. Right. I love
Yes.
that, because for our listeners, it's important to know that that's 12 years later that you added the software component. And for big music games and for our songwriting curriculum, it was somewhat similar in terms of the life, you know, the sort of the evolution rather. Okay, solid. So that was our why, Daniel. And I think what's interesting for our listeners, if I can say this before we get to the next sort of question and topic, is neither you nor I were like, let's make $1 million. You said it so well. Like, we saw a specific need for within the studio that we were developing, and we had the need as a teacher, and we were struggling without solving this. Like, so we needed to solve something, and all these entrepreneurs always say the same thing. Like, I just read a great Einstein quote, which was like, "Don't focus on how to be successful; focus on how to be useful."
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And I will
success.
say,
Yeah,
yeah, we couldn't find a solution to our problem out there already. Now, that was 2005.
right. It's different now.
Oh, it's way different now because there's tons of solutions and they're more easily accessible. And in 2005, there was a solution. It was probably from a major publisher like FJH or Hal Leonard.
Hmm. Hmm.
Now, everyone's selling their own thing. Everyone has become their own publishing company. So it's very different now, and it's much more crowded. And again, I'm stealing from the end of the episode, so I'll shut up.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to highlight that piece though, Daniel, because um, I have a mantra that is create and celebrate daily. Like that's like a personal mantra for me. And I added to this, partly inspired by the work that we do, that was like create, share, and celebrate daily. Right. So like, for those of you that are listening and thinking, I am a creator, most of you are, I'm sure you all are, by the way, whether or not you identify yourself as such. Um, and you're thinking, hey, I really want to, develop my own way to do this in my studio, my own curriculum. It is really important to first ask yourself, are you naturally finding problems that you are trying to solve anyways? If you're not already seeing problems every day in your studio that you're trying to solve, well, then that are specific around the student's musical journey, then you're probably a little too soon to the game. Probably can adopt, a pre-existing curriculum, but just think about it a little differently, which we'll get into next. So,
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. What challenges did you experience in building? Because you guys have built so much at BMF, and you have even had people who work for you to build it
we have,
for
yeah,
you. Yeah. So you've built big music games, you've built Rock, Write, and Record, you've built Jam Band 101 curriculum, so many different curriculum.
yeah.
Curriculum.
So the question is, what challenges did we have or did we face in the actual building of the content? Yeah.
Yes.
Um, right out of the gate, uh, and this was described to me by one of our partners, a remote team that helped us, is that I was confused by either how much it would cost, how long it would take, or the quality that we could output. And they said to me, Nate, you can always only have two of three. So you have to be very careful. And we've talked about this on other episodes, right? And I wanted all three. And I wanted all three right now at no cost.
Quality, speed, and money. You can only have two. So if you want to be quality and you want it fast, it's gonna cost. It's gonna cost a lot. Like
Yep.
this sort of thing. If you want it to be fast and you want it to be, you get the point.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fascinating to actually reframe your entire music studio or school in those parameters. But from the point of developing curriculum, um, the initial challenges were pretty straightforward, which is um, it's very exciting to develop a lesson plan, i.e., like when you talk about your summer camp with Piano Express, it can be really exciting to think about what they're going to do in the morning on Monday,
Mm.
right? And then it can still be exciting to think what they do in the afternoon on Monday. But the real challenge initially is you have to imagine, like in our songwriter's journey, you not only have to imagine what they're going to do in weeks 1 through 5 of the semester, but you have to know where they're going to end in week 15. And you have to know every step that gets them from the beginning of a semester to the end of a semester. And the initial challenge for me was just, I have to see this student and their evolution from today through 15 weeks later based on the games that I'm designing. So the initial challenge was really around how do you level an ear training game for a 6-year-old appropriately so that they move at a very specific patient pace. So they don't move too fast, you don't lose them. You don't move too slow, you don't lose them, right? You can either bore them or you can confuse them. And pedagogues know what I'm talking about. The second thing is that once you begin to design a single semester of a songwriting curriculum with games to support it and all that, you then have to think, well, wait, this student, you want to retain them for 3, 6, 10 years. So your curriculum, you actually have to have a vision for where they're going to be in 3 years from now, and then another 6 years from now. And so, dude, the thing that was so challenging was that I was like psyched to build a game that would be really exciting for the next lesson, not for 48 lessons from now.
Right.
So that was my initial, like right out of the gate without getting into the weeds. That was like year one of this. I was like, whoa, I have to be thinking much longer term in my design.
Mm.
How about you? What did you guys run into out of the gate?
Yeah. It's different than what you experienced because I was 22 when we started writing this stuff.
Right.
Endless energy, full of hope and youth and optimism.
Totally.
And so Greg and I basically just threw time at it because we had lots of it.
Yeah, you were just pounding. You would work a 14-hour day on this sucker and
Yeah.
wouldn't even feel it. At 22,
Yeah.
you don't even know that you didn't sleep.
So Greg and I literally, we had a standing appointment every Saturday because back then, gosh, this is so funny. Because back then, cell phones, your minutes didn't count on the weekend.
Right, I remember you mentioned this, so you could talk all
So
day
we
long.
would literally have an 8 to 9 hour meeting on Saturday. We did this every Saturday, almost without exception, for 6 straight months, planning the curriculum out, talking through challenges and problems. And in our mind, we were motivated by money, but at the time we were like, we're going to just take over the Northern Virginia area. Like, we're going to be the best camp. We're going to have hundreds of kids enroll. We're going to make so much money from this. So there was that economic interest that we had, obviously. So I would say the challenge wasn't in writing the curriculum. For us, we did it. And even that first summer, we had great success with it. We didn't really have to change the curriculum that much. I think there was a few songs we threw out of the songbook because they ended up being too hard for the kids. But we literally just rewrote them that night and came back the next day with reprinted pages. It was a test. I think the challenge for us was similar to you, but different in a way. It was patience because we just thought, all we have to do is advertise this and we're going to have hundreds of kids enroll this summer in 2005. The first summer we had 7.
Yeah, totally. And you put in 6 months of Saturdays.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
And the next summer, I think we had like 25. And again, Greg and I was really disappointed. Greg is just built different than me, which is why we're such a good team and have been for so long. 20 years we've been working together at this point, as of right now, because that's the first time we ever went in together on like a business venture. We had just been friends for the previous 5 or 4. So point is that we had that second summer. I think third summer, we didn't grow all that much, but by the 5th summer, we were enrolling like 150 kids in 2010. It took longer.
Patience.
It took patience. I think part of it too was just neither one of us knew what we were doing marketing wise back then. And we just didn't want to risk the money to really go big with the marketing. So we spent modest amounts of money when in reality, I think we probably could have grown faster if we'd really gone hard on spending the money. Yeah. So that was the challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. And early on, you guys are investing insane amounts of time into designing curriculum. And it reminds me when you say the marketing challenge, first of all, you guys were young, so you got to give yourself a little bit of grace around learning the craft of marketing and sales, et cetera. But like early on, it's like, this is our, for those of you that are watching, this is our group piano class. It's called Club Keyboard. It's a story-driven curriculum. But early on, you think the parents, all they want to see is how amazing it is the songs that you've composed are. You're like, no, you won't believe it. They're going to play this thing called Meet the Waltz. It's such a good song. but parents don't actually need to hear about the features of your
No,
amazing songwriting
not at all.
curriculum. They want to know the benefits to their child, right? That's what they need to know. So early on, of course, we're focused on the thing we've created because we think that's the thing that sells.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing because there are really two time periods. Because back to then we were B2C, we were business to consumer.
Yeah,
Now we're
totally.
B2B. So
Right.
there's a new challenge now, and that is there is such a glut of resources and options and opportunities in this market now that I think the challenge of building a custom curriculum isn't in actually building it. There's so many tools now that you can use and publishing options, that sort of thing. The challenge is just one of getting exposure to it. And teachers and school owners nowadays have so many options that the quality has to be very, very high and your exposure has to be very, very high, I think, to get a foothold in the door.
Can I
And I think that's the challenge now.
Yeah. So as you're anticipating, if you're listening now and you're anticipating 3 years from now, when you're done with this curriculum and you've invested all this time and effort, you also have to ask yourself, are you ready to invest that time to be heard? Right. That's a whole different. That's actually a whole different podcast series entirely on how to get heard in a crowded, loud market. I want to add one other challenge though, too, because you and Greg meeting on Saturdays reminded me of this. So as we started developing more big music games, because that's where we really started, was with the games, the ear training games for kids. But then we started moving into, I think our first book was 30 Jams, 30 Lessons was our guitar book. I'm holding it up here. We have two of these. Um, as we started getting into actually creating these materials and books that could take students for many, many years, I started realizing that there were additional challenges, Daniel. And one of them was that I had all these gaps. I was useful for many things, but I wasn't useful for everything required to make as you said, a really high quality curriculum. And so I wrote down on my board, as you were talking about, you said, Greg and I are just built different. Well, of course, I just heard this quote the other day, like you desperately want to hire people that you don't necessarily want to hang out with always, because you need different brains in the room. I'm not saying that I know you and Greg are really old, like he is your bestie, I'm guessing. But like the point is like, I just took that quote and I was like, whoa. And I remember like when we were working on the songwriter's journey, that it wasn't that I didn't want to hang out with Greg or I didn't want to hang out with Nick or all these amazing brains that were part of it. But I knew that there were gaps and we needed talent and team to fill them. And so it does require you as a curriculum designer or as the project leader to know exactly where you fall short and where you're going to need help. Because at Brooklyn Music Factory, we have had many, many people design this curriculum over the 15 years that we've been doing it. And it certainly isn't the Nate Show. Hell no, it's not the Nate Show. What it is that my main role is to seed the idea and to keep everyone focused on what the outcome of a curriculum is supposed to be, which I know we're going to talk more about in a bit. But as a founder of your school, you're designing something. If you choose to design a curriculum, or for most of you, you're going to choose to actually license or borrow or buy a curriculum. That's what most people do to grow seven-figure schools. You're going to make sure that whatever it is that you're borrowing, that you're using, is aligned with why you started the school in the first place. At Brooklyn Music Factory, I was like, I want collaborative musicians that are composers and songwriters that want to, by the time they're 14, be able to write and record an entire record of original music. That's what I want this place to do, right? So every curriculum choice, Daniel, was along those lines, which is why we quickly abandoned after writing 48. We wrote so many jam tracks to Music Tree through level 3. And then eventually I was like, why are we still scoring to these songs? Let's just write our own songs. So anyways, your job is to know what the outcome for your student is supposed to be if they succeed in your studio, but then to make sure that you're starting to pull in curriculum that is going to support that outcome.
I hear that.
This episode is sponsored by BigMusicGames.com. As our listeners know, Brooklyn Music Factory is all about a fun, fluency-first approach to music lessons. And at the foundation of our teaching methods are rhythm, melody, harmony, and songwriting games that challenge students as young as 4 years old to train their ears and flex that musical mind. Because when you set an intention of gamifying every single lesson, you're going to find improved attendance, increased play at home, and higher student retention. So we've set up a website just for our listeners so you can start playing today. Go to bigmusicgames.com/7FMS and create your free account. Again, that's bigmusicgames.com/7FMS. And if you join today, I'm going to send you a personal invite to join our weekly teacher training call with me and Greggy Bizzle, our chief game designer. Go ahead and put play back into practice with Big Music Games.
Well, I think this next question I have for you, I don't think we need to linger long on this one because in a way we've kind of answered it, but I think we can just provide some specificity. But Nate, how long, in your opinion, from personal experience and then just also projecting that personal experience, how long does it take to build custom curriculum, or how long should it take?
Dude, that's like asking the question, how long, and not that I've ever trained for a marathon, but how long does it take to train for a marathon? You train for your first marathon, and then you're just like, you have that month-long drop-off, and then you're like, okay, time to train for another. Like, there isn't actually like a defined amount of time to build curriculum because you're always refining the thing you built, which is why I remember BMF Dad, when I said we wanted to design our custom software to operate the company, and we have an LMS, a learning management system that we've designed over the last 10 years. He was like, be careful what you wish for, because every code you write, you have to manage for the life of that code.
Every line.
It's the same for curriculum, right? It's not a set it and forget it, because as you evolve as a school, you are going to you're going to be refining what you designed. But that is that's not a useful, that's a little bit of a debilitating answer. So let me give you a more concrete answer for those that are considering. When we did the songwriter's journey, and most of the curriculum we do in sprints, very similar to you and Greg. So like when you guys said you did a 6-month sprint to get that first set of lesson plans for your first camp together, we're quite similar. So when we did the songwriter's journey, which is a 6-year curriculum, so 3 years for 6 beginning levels and 3 years for 6 intermediate levels, we did a sprint that lasted about 2 months. And we had, I would say we had like 3 part-time people working for 2 months straight to design all of the jam videos, all of the supporting templates, the technique videos that go into the drum department, guitar department, piano department, to get the first draft of that curriculum and get it ready to be able to use in a fall season. We spent a solid 2 months. So that's like 1.5 full-time people, like 3 half-time people doing it, different skills like video editor, audio producer, graphic designer, curriculum designer. And then we spent, I would say, the next year filling all the holes. And most of the holes were around not the core of the curriculum. It would be like most of the holes were around all the support materials that teachers needed to succeed with it. Right? So usually a curriculum has 2 pieces, right, Daniel? You have the student-facing content, and then you have the teaching manual, right? So you need both if you want to succeed at scale. You only need one if you're the only person teaching it to start, right?
Yeah. I will just provide a not a counterpoint, but another perspective on top of yours, because our experience of building curriculum has been one where there was a defined build time, there was a defined period, and then we actually have largely set and forget it. Even if you look at big publishers like Faber, they came out with their second edition of the Piano Adventure series 20 years ago. And their original version had been around for about 15 years. And to my knowledge, they've not changed it that much since the mid 2000s, that second edition.
Mm.
There is no third edition yet, you know. And I would say that with Piano Express, the last time we did major updates to the curriculum, and we did, was after we got a number of schools using our curriculum and method. And we got a lot of feedback from the user base, because up to that point, the curriculum and the method largely represented the challenges and opinions and educational direction that Greg had for it based on his experience of using it in the Piano Express studios in Northern Virginia, because he has multiple locations. Once other people got involved, songs that Greg had, he didn't even think about. We had lots of licensees saying, "Oh, all of our students really struggle with this song."
Yes.
And we're kind of scratching our head and thinking, well, we've never had our students struggle with this. And so this is just reflective of, well, maybe we just teach that concept in a certain way, or maybe we know how to lead students up to that because we have a certain way of teaching in person. And so we did make major adjustments to the curriculum. Huge adjustments.
Yeah, it's really, listening to your story there, it makes me think about stages of development in a curriculum.
Yeah, which we don't want to get into in this episode.
No, stages of development. But I just love that last point you made, because when you're a single teacher studio, and we've talked about this many times when we're talking about retention, teacher training, scaling to 7 figures with multi-teacher studios. We've got so many episodes on this that touch on this. But you're bringing up such a good point, which is initially your data pool is too small because it's only your own.
Yes.
You dig? It's only your own experience. Then you bring on Greg brings on even like 3 or 4 teachers within his multi-location Piano Express, and he's starting to learn more about the curriculum. But then once you guys scaled and added, say, 20 schools or 30 schools that were using Piano Express around the country or around the world, then the data pool really just expands to an incredibly useful, in a very useful way, because it's getting us to look at curriculum differently than, just through our own glasses.
And this brings up 2 thoughts for me, both brief, and the second thought kind of leading into the final set of questions I have for this. Okay, so for 2 other episodes, that if you want to listen to the experiences of others, we've actually had 2 other people on the podcast that have spoken to some of the things that we're talking about here. So for a different perspective, you could listen, and Bethany's going to have to look this up and put it in the show notes, but Dave Simon, we had on over 100 episodes ago, and he talked about his experience of building a side hustle into a rather large licensing business. And then we had Vera from Columbus, Ohio, who has a 1,000-kid school, who built her own method. And she spoke somewhat. In fact, we told her we wanted to have her back on the podcast to talk about just that. And we never actually invited her back, even though I know, right? We'll have her back on because she is such a fascinating character. And obviously her school, we got a lot of comments about that episode. And it isn't as if we, have snubbed her. It's just that we've had so many things to talk about. We just haven't reached out to her yet. So Nate, I think make a note. We need to reach out to her.
Vera, if you're listening.
Yeah. I know she's listening.
Okay.
So we'll put both of those episodes in the show notes. But Vera wrote her own entire method.
Yeah. Second thing, really cool.
Yeah. Second thing I want to talk about here, and this leads into, I think, my final set of questions, is some of the questions that were that I'm asking you, or that we're asking each other here, are actually questions that we got from a listener in a very long email that he sent to me. And the whole reason I wanted to make these episodes was to
Mm-hmm.
answer the email, so to speak, but do it in a way that would help and benefit everybody who listens to us. There is an underlying assumption in a lot of the questions that we're answering here. And it's the idea, the underlying assumption is, do I want to build something custom to have a side hustle or side business? So, what challenges did you experience? How long does it take to build a custom curriculum? And then even some of the other questions that we got and that I've gotten from a lot of people over the years is just like, it's almost as if they're doing a little bit of research to see if they want to build something. And I would just say,
Mm.
if you're asking questions like, how long should it take? How hard is this? All that sort of thing. You are in definitely the wrong headspace, especially now. It was the wrong headspace 10 years ago. Now, you're just setting yourself up for failure. Because if you're just doing this because you want a side hustle and you're looking at the skills that you already have and like, oh, well, I could build that and I know how to, build some Canva images that I could put on the cover of a custom book that I made, like, forget it. You're cooked. Don't even think about it. Because I would just say, at this point, you just have to have a burning passion to do this, because it is going to be challenging, which is what I want to end the episode with. Do you
Yeah.
want to go there, Nate? I don't know. It looks like you have something to say.
Well, I think about this like every day, and I think, can I reframe what you said slightly?
Sure,
Which is
yeah.
that you need to have a burning passion to want to train teachers and to see them succeed. That's what your burning passion has to be. So just like if you have a burning passion to work with that 9-year-old piano student and to see her grow over the next 6 years, there has to be an equally strong burning passion to see that studio owner and their teaching staff succeed with your curriculum. I think about that every time I'm talking to a teacher or training like a teacher on big music games. I'm like, I realize it feels like I'm teaching Miles, my 8-year-old student, in the best way. I mean that.
Okay. I have to jump in here because I hinted at this when we asked what are the challenges, but I didn't elaborate more. It is by far much harder to market to other businesses. And I will just tell you, I've been in this business 10 years now of consulting, helping other businesses, helping. If you are building a business, and I don't know, I might make some enemies with this statement. And I have inadvertently made enemies before with things I've said, just speaking truthfully. And I thought I was being tactful, but
What do you
you
got?
can never please people. You are under a microscope. And again, because the choice is so great in our industry right now, um, uh, people can be fickle, or
That's
jump
true.
ship very easily, or have unrealistic expectations, or they expect premium service and they want to pay bargain bin prices.
Right.
And the only way around this is to have strong frame. The only way around this is to have a strong vision. The only way around this is to truly not pretend at being a leader, but truly embody leadership principles,
Mm.
and be prepared to spend more time in customer service and customer management and marketing than you will, and training, to your point, than you will on actually doing the thing of
Well,
building
designing.
curriculum or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah,
designing.
you're certainly going to
That's
spend
why.
way more. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why earlier I said, like, no, actually, I found it to be kind of more like I can kind of set and forget that part of it once it's good enough.
Mm.
When we released Piano Express to the world, and it was no longer just an in-house thing, it was really a 2-year process to bring it up to the point. And I mean, we have a software component too, which is just its own thing. And I will just say, oh man, see, we are getting into the end of the podcast now. We have a team over here. we didn't do, just like you, Nate, we didn't do this alone. And so
No,
many
hell
people who
no.
come to me who are like thinking about doing this. So I would even say there are schools out there that I know of that have built custom stuff, and their school is making over $1 million a year. So they're not bad at business. They're not bad at leadership. They've got what it takes. And they have something that they've built in-house that they're wanting to sell to the world. And even then, I've seen those people run out of energy or money or motivation to do it because this is freaking hard. And I will tell, and this is, so go ahead.
No, it's hard, and it's an entirely different business.
It really is.
When you're selling to a parent who is making a choice about their 8-year-old child, that's radically different than selling to a teacher or to a studio owner and trying to convince them that you have something that can align with their vision, et cetera. And the underlying thing is that, and you want to be super careful of the shiny object. You don't want to get distracted. If you're struggling with actually putting together a sustainable, profitable business, honestly, your investment should be in something like the Founders Forum or any other version of leadership training, et cetera, that you were just referencing, Daniel, rather than in designing a new product that you need to solve how to market and sell.
Yeah.
And create profitability out of. And it sounds like a pitch for the forum, but really what it is a pitch for focus.
Yeah.
Stay focused on developing a really successful studio.
Yeah. And I will just say that, yeah, you know what? You've said it perfectly fine, which is, I kept hinting at this for the last 5 minutes, but let's go to the final 2 questions, because my final 2 questions for you or for us are, who should build a custom curriculum? And how difficult is it to sell that custom curriculum or those materials, which I've kind of already hinted at, but I do have more to share there. So Nate, who should build a custom curriculum?
I mean, okay, well, let's start with where I just left off, and then I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay.
One who should build a custom curriculum is one who feels confident about their 3-year forecast for their existing business. So start there. That. You need to have a 3-year
I literally just had a conversation with someone who their studio is making $750,000 and they can't find the time to build financial statements for their school. So I know they're not forecasting.
You need to have a 3-year forecast where you're like, I can easily explain this to my dad and I'm 90% confident. Like you can't be like, so that's number one. You should have that in hand. Number 2, you should have invested time and effort in researching all the possibilities. And maybe we'll talk about this in another episode, but researching what's out there and asking yourself the fundamental question, does something already exist that can deliver on promise to my students to ensure that they're at our school for, say, 6 years? Say that's their musician's journey. So does something already exist? If so, what needs to be put in place to ensure that I get maximum value out of that curriculum that already exists so that my retention rates are high enough that I can serve that student for 6 years? If you've done your research, you have a solid 3-year forecast, and you're saying, man, I don't know. You know, I've tested out Piano Express, or I've tried the Songwriter's Journey curriculum, or I've tried any number of other options out there, but there just isn't anything that's going to deliver on my promise exactly how I need it, then I'd say, great, start getting out your sketch pad and plan on a 3 to 5 year journey of developing a curriculum and learning how to get that to a profitable place.
This episode is sponsored by GroupLessons.com. If you're looking for a group piano method that is easy to implement in your studio or school, look no farther than Piano Express from GroupLessons.com. Because unlike most group piano methods, Piano Express allows students to make individual progress within the context of a larger group. And because of the at-home practice tools and gamified curriculum, students using the Piano Express method make faster progress than the average method book student. And that helps students feel excited, accomplished, and motivated to learn new music. Also, the system is really adaptable. We've got teachers using the system in their home studios And we have many large commercial studios running our 3-room model that allows you to see up to 24 students per hour with just 2 teachers. So if you'd like to learn more about Piano Express, navigate to grouplessons.com and sign up for a free demo. You'll get to look at the method, our app and teacher guides, and we'll even give you a sneak peek of our implementation plan that has helped hundreds of studios start their group program in just a few weeks.
Daniel, back to you. That's my initial criteria. I hope that's useful.
Who should build a custom curriculum?
Almost nobody.
And I think there's a second episode here that we could probably make just on how to pick a curriculum for your school or how to choose curriculum for your school.
Totally.
For different programs and that sort of thing. But I would just say that if you're building it simply as a side hustle, there are easier ways to make money.
Yes.
Yes, that's one.
Way easier.
Yeah. And 2, back when I took piano pedagogy in college, I had a professor. And it was so funny because here we are getting ready to embark on a required semester-long class in piano ped. And one of the things we started out at the beginning of the semester was a survey of available curriculum at the time. And what books you could teach out of that sort of thing. And Dr. Crawford said to me, it's not the curriculum, it's the teacher. Well, he said it to the class. It's not the curriculum, it's the teacher. He said, there's no curriculum out there that's going to make a student do better. It is you. And so what tool do you want to choose? I'm paraphrasing him because that was a long time ago. But right. Anyway, the point is that I've gotten on Zoom calls with teachers who have this thing that they want to sell. And I'm like, well, why did you build this? And it was like, oh, well, and then they give these super nitpicky reasons for why Piano Adventures or Piano Pronto or Hal Leonard, like, oh, I don't like, I don't like the shape of the note heads. I think note heads should be shaped this way. Or I don't like the way, I have a slightly different take on how to explain intervallic reading. And it's like, oh my goodness. Get over it.
Yeah, totally.
It is not the curriculum, it is the teacher. And so you don't need to have a slightly different way to explain how to teach eighth notes or to teach intervallic reading. Like, it doesn't matter. Just do it. We don't need a book that codifies it, And so I would just say that I find a lot of the people who want to do this either think the money will be easy, or they have these nitpicks with everything out there because they can't be happy with the cornucopia of resources that are out there, and they're just deep down dissatisfied with everything, but not in a way that's actually useful to them, let alone everyone else. It's not useful going through life nitpicking things. Find a way to be happy. It is a learned skill. Just be happy, So I think most people shouldn't, and especially in today's market, we are oversaturated in the music industry right now of people wanting to be coaches or designers or things of that nature, and that really gets into how difficult is it. My other question for you: do you want to go there, Nate, or do you want to comment on anything I just said there? I think we can go there.
Let's go to that last question, because I loved your idea of a follow-up episode, which is how does one get through, or how does one curate what's out there and find what's right for them?
So then I'll just finish my thought and then maybe kick it over to you to end the episode and say, how difficult is it to sell? So I'm just going to give some perspective. 10 years ago in 2015, when I was researching starting a blog for the experiences I'd had in the previous 10 years of my career, the big names were Andrea Dow, Wendy Stevens, Joy Morin, Tim Topham, who was obviously still such a heavyweight. These were the big names. Jennifer Eklund had built Piano Pronto and had started one of the biggest, Facebook groups ever. To that point, Piano Teacher Central, I think at that time it only had 5,000 members. and these were the bloggers. Video really hadn't become a thing yet. There were, Tim Topham's podcast was really the only game in town. There really weren't any others that were of note. When I started blogging, there really wasn't anyone who had taken the perspective I did, which was a business only take. The only other person who'd really done that was Sam Beckford, but he really wasn't even blogging. He wasn't trying to be an influencer, so to speak. And to be truthful, I wasn't either. I had economic motives. I wasn't trying to be an influencer. In fact, the term influencer really wasn't even around at that point. So Sam had been running conferences. There was one other thing out there that was teaching business information. I'm not even going to dignify that person by naming who it is, because they were pretty awful to me and said a bunch of awful stuff about me behind my back, and I'm not even going to dignify it with a response. Had warned people not to listen to me, and then later just started blatantly ripping off my material because I was right. Anyway, the point is that it was a lot easier to get in back then. It was a lot easier to make a splash. Now, not so much. Everybody's got something to sell. The Facebook groups are overloaded, overcrowded. There's a Facebook group for everything now. The first move everyone does is make a Facebook group, and then all the same 5,000 people are in all of them. 10,000 people are in all of them. And the same questions get asked over and over and over again. We are way past the information age. And it is now just who has the most money to spend on exposure, and who will serve their customer the best. Honestly, that's really where it's at. And even we're part of my exit from kind of the information and coaching side of this industry into this was fortunate, because I built a platform and had built a ton of customers who trusted me, who literally I've said to people, or people have said to me, Daniel, just whenever you release something, I'm not even going to read the sales page. I'm just going to buy it, just because there's been trust built. And so I would say that if you are in this to build something and release something into this space at this point, you are competing not for market share necessarily, although, okay, you are competing for market share in an already crowded market where there's a lot of resources and materials and methods out there. That is true. What you're really competing in is for attention.
Yeah, totally.
And exposure. That's the real competition. And so how are you going to do that? How good is the market? Because the marketing has to be top notch.
Yeah, I think to bring it full circle back to the initial question, should I design my own curriculum? We're like 165 episodes into a podcast that, as you've mentioned before, Daniel, we thought we'd only have 10 episodes worth of material.
Right.
So you have to love the idea of being in service to our population of educators.
Yeah.
You have to love that. You have to be like, I can imagine 160 episodes of my podcast in service to these people. Yeah. And from there, you will begin to find an audience. And from there, you can begin to get a tiny percentage of that audience that may decide that your, as you put it in the open, unique flashcards are just what they need, right? But that is not a 1 year or even a 3 year project. I mean, Daniel, how long we've been at this pod for?
3 years.
I mean, we've been working together for
years,
at least 3 years.
Yeah. Well, the pod's been around for 3 years. We've been working together for 4.
Yeah. So that's just it's motivated by something entirely different than a side hustle.
Yeah.
So
I resonate with that. There is a deep passion in me to help people, and I am a fierce competitor.
Right. You couple those two things together.
Yeah. And so I would just say that for anyone who has their idea that they want to put out into the world, and I didn't realize this was going to basically become an episode on online entrepreneurialism, but it is not a battle. It is not even a campaign. It is a war, and it is a long one. And you really, really have to be in it for the long haul. You have to be ready to spend money. You have to be ready, and probably a lot of it. You have to be ready to lead a team, because you will not survive in this space without a team at this point. And you have to be ready to level up your skills in a lot of different areas.